What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the channel, and we have some great news. Today we're going to be, sorry, I'm like stumbling over my words already. We're going to be jumping into a recap of the offseason here. Following our rise to greatness as World Series champions. We're coming off a World Series championship, so I didn't think it was a time. My style is not to be complacent, and I'm telling you guys that now because there were moves made in the offseason to get rid of some players that I just personally didn't work well with, players that I thought it was time to move on from and stuff like that, and players to fill different positions. So with all that being said, I do want to reiterate that I don't like to be complacent, and the team was good enough to win a World Series last season, but it might not be good enough to win a World Series this season. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you guys what we did to bring the team around for spring training of the next season, which would be February 2020. I'm going to go through the team, go through some of the transactions, and just show you guys what's up. I apologize if you see a thing popping up in the corner. That's my friend inviting me to a party. I'm going to go ahead and join his party after this video is done. But let's get into the recap. So contract extension-wise, we did get everybody extended. As you can see, we brought back in Josh Harrison as a utility player. That one was actually kind of a mistake as a signing. We bid on him, and I forgot to remove my bid from him in the middle of offseason. So we have to find a place for him. He is currently up on the Major League roster, but he will probably be down at AAA until a time when somebody gets injured and we need him. Free agency-wise, most of the good free agents fell. Garrett Cole was one of the best free agents out there, and I'm not sure exactly where he went to, but we can go ahead and review some of that later on. Ben Zobrist, however, is still out here in free agency, so keep that in mind for your franchises. Ben Zobrist will probably be here in free agency, mainly because I assume he's 38, so, I mean, you could utilize him as a starting player. He's got really good contact on both sides, half decent power and half decent fielding numbers. He was up there last season in league leading for batting average, so certainly a player that you guys would want to keep on your radar, but we don't have room for him, and I'll show you why on our team. And this is how things stack up for our team. So we have a lot of green at a lot of different positions. We're good in all the outfield spots. We're really good at first base, obviously, because Josh Bell took a huge leap last season. We're good at catcher with two good catchers. We're good at starting pitcher, and I'll show you guys why. Shortstop, Cole Tucker's coming along, and third base, Vladdy Jr. has some room to improve. And then closing pitcher, relief pitcher, obviously. We had a really good bullpen last year, and we improved upon it, so we are first in that category as well. So let me go ahead and jump into the team and show you guys how everything stacks up. Now, one of the first things that you'll see is there is a lot of turnover in the pitching rotation, and this was intentional. I had mentioned a few times last season that I wasn't sure who I was going to move on from, but I did know I was keeping around Jameson Taillon and Trevor Williams, so we did. We stuck around with Jameson Taillon and Trevor Williams, and as you guys will remember, Michael Kopech came in last season, and he got a big overall jump in the offseason up to an 81 overall, and so he had a potential. So obviously those three slotted into the lineup, and I had been talking for a while about how Mitch Keller was pitching well, and we wanted to get him up into the major leagues before it was too late, and so he was the fourth pitcher. And so obviously in order for this to happen, two of the bottom three had to go, and the bottom three were Chris Archer, Joe Musgrove, and Chad Cole. So originally this slot was Joe Musgrove, and then we made another trade in order to bring in Reynaldo Lopez. He came over from the White Sox, and the reason being is that we helped the White Sox out with some other positions, because there were some players that I just flat out I wanted to bring in and I wanted to play with. And I'm at a point in this franchise where you guys know from the beginning that it wasn't realistic. It is intended to be me making moves that I think the Pirates should be doing to make this team better and building the best squad possible. I'm not sitting here trying to work around the budget or anything like that. I'm spending the money. I'm actually not spending that much money because I have these guys all signed on pretty fair contracts, so I will go through the contracts and show you guys some of that. So Taillon, last year we inked him to 3 more years at 7.5 per, which is pretty good for the value that he is. I mean, starting pitcher money, Garrett Cole wanted like I don't know, it was like 25 or 30 mil per year or something ridiculous like that. And so considering where Jameson Taillon's at in his career, I think that we have him for a pretty good price. Trevor Williams, he is under 6.3 million for 4 years, which is a really good price for him. And considering their ages, these guys will be around and in their prime for a few more years. And when those deals run out, so it'll be time to renegotiate then and decide what we want to do with them then. So we're pretty much locked up at the top end of our rotation here. 2 aces at the top of the rotation. I'm pretty cool with that. And then Michael Kopech, we did sign him to a contract, and we decided to pay him and backload his contract because we expect that he's going to be a really good pitcher for us, and we want him to be around for a long time. Obviously, he's only 23 years old, so his contract goes through 2025. He's signed on for 6 more years. That takes him through the age of 29, which will be like right in the middle of his prime, and we'll go from there if we ever hit that point in the franchise. But I really like having him locked up for long term. And then Mitch Keller, I believe we renewed his contract. Yeah, it allowed us to renew his contract at a really low price, and I wasn't going to pass up on that option. He might be a little unhappy based on his contract value, so we'll see what happens with that, but we'll try and keep him happy by just having him be a good performer and being on a contending team. And then Reynaldo Lopez came over, and he is under contract. This is one of the biggest reasons why I brought him over, is he is under contract for a ridiculously good amount of money for what overall he is. As you can see, he's an 83 overall, and he's actually making less money than we had to pay Michael Kopech. So I don't know how the White Sox managed this contract on him, but they managed 4 years extended over top of this year's 9.5K, 3.4 per year for 4 extra years. That's an absolutely phenomenal contract. So this pitching rotation is going to be intact for the foreseeable future. The only thing I could see happening is if somebody gets unhappy and wants a trade. I don't know if they can even request a trade because I haven't had it happen yet because everybody's been happy. But if somebody needs to leave the organization, we could consider moving one of these guys. But for the most part, we have it where we want to be, and we don't have any top-level competition right away that's going to push for those spots. We do have some nice draft picks and stuff down here in the farm that maybe we'll transition into bullpen arms or something like that, or could just be used as good trade chips or, down the line type of players that could fill in the rotation if we ever need them for an injury or whatever it might be. A couple B potentials and stuff like that. Sandy Gaston, I believe he was a draft pick for us. Luis Escobar. We also have Zach Lowther, who I believe we brought over in a trade. We have Luis Oviedo, who you guys have seen before, Braxton Ashcraft, who does have a potential, who I'm excited about. I hope that he does get up there, and overall, he might be a good trade piece or a good bullpen arm. Chad Goldsmith was a draft pick this year, so a really good pick up there. And then Xavier Driscoll, I believe he was a draft pick as well, so he has the potential. So good, good at the starting pitcher position. Now, in terms of the relief pitchers, we stuck with pretty much the majority of what we had here going on last year, except for we traded away a couple. We traded away, who was it? Richard Rodriguez. And the reason being was he wanted more money than I think I was willing to give him. I just personally didn't like him. I didn't like his pitch selection. In real life, he isn't as good as his number was in the game, so we gave him away for a cheap deal. We didn't get a ton in return for him, but what you'll see, the trade was favorable to the other team. But what you'll see is that the bullpen stayed primarily intact. Keone Kela, obviously last year, got the upgrade to a 91 overall A potential. And I made the decision based on the fact that we have a lot of budget left over here, 2.6 mil per year, that we were going to pay Keone Kela. He wanted a lot of money, and I was okay keeping him because I really like him and I'm really good with him. And so we extended him on a massive deal, $12 million per year. And I don't see us getting to this point in the franchise, so we paid him through the point where he's like 36 years old. It was like 10 years, $120 million, which is fine because I intend for him to be good in our bullpen for as long as humanly possible. I mean, he's only 26 years old, so the majority of those years on that contract are going to be fairly good, and we might be able to trade him away, late into that contract whenever he's still pretty good and somebody just needs a bullpen arm that's got experience. So I honestly think that's favorable for our position, and we'll see how that works out going forward. Archie Bradley got an upgrade in the middle of the offseason. Sorry, excuse me. when we hit the offseason, I mean. And he's up to a 91 with A potential, which is great. Obviously, bringing him over from the Diamondbacks was a huge move for us. He was doing very poorly for them. He was at like a 76 overall, and when we brought him over, he immediately started performing better. So we signed him to a 4-year deal, 6.5 per year, which is manageable for a guy that's that good in the bullpen. I think that's a very fair deal. And obviously, Keone Kela is making a hell of a lot more for a player that is, of equal caliber. Edgar Santana, a nice, real middle of the bullpen type of guy. We got him on a cheap deal, 1.5 per year for 2 years, and then we have arbitration left after that. So I really just like him as the kind of middle of the rotation type of guy. He might slot into a setup spot. We'll see. But we have somebody else waiting in the wings that I think could be a good setup spot. Joe Jimenez, obviously we kept him around. He was our trade acquisition last year from the Detroit Tigers. Contract-wise, we got him on a cheap deal as well, 1.7 for 2 years, and he has some arbitration left. Jose Urena, obviously we kept around because he was kind of our reclamation project off of the Marlins last year, and because they helped us out with him, we helped their team out. So we might look at some of that stuff later on, some of these teams that we helped out. Urena, 1.8 for 3 years. I'm confident that he can be a good bullpen arm for us still, and if we need him to, he can start some games. Now, what you'll see is that we drafted Tanner Scott, a relief pitcher, in the Rule 5 draft. And the reason being was it was really hard to just not pass up on this guy because he looks like somebody that I would be good with. He's got 99 velocity, 93 break, 70 home run per 9, and then 98 K per 9. He looks like a really good relief pitcher and could turn into somebody really good for me. Now, the Rule 5 draft means that he has to stay on our roster for the entire season, on the Major League roster, or we would have to release him. And then I believe the team that we drafted him from gets first dibs on him. He came over from the Orioles. I don't know how he wasn't protected, but I was not passing up on the option to get this guy that we have control over for 6 more years. We can renew his contract in 2022, then we have arbitration for 3 years, and he's only 630 Ks for 2 years. So he should get up there in overall pretty quickly. We need to edit his number, I just realized that. But that's how the bullpen shakes out in terms of the relief pitchers, and then in terms of the closing pitcher, Vasquez obviously is sticking around. Contract-wise, he's under contract for 2 years. That was already in. So we will have to re-sign him in 2022. We'll see what happens with that. That will be whenever he's 30 years old. I don't know. That'll be interesting to see what happens there. But this is a guy I'm talking about that I kind of want to use as a setup man along with... well, actually, no, I lied. Keone Kela and Bradley will be the setup men. And so I originally had Matt Elise. He was our draft pick. I think our second-round draft pick, actually. I had him up in the MLB, but I decided I'm going to start him out in AAA and give him some experience down in AAA and just see what he can do. He is a 70 overall with A potential, so he will slot into the bullpen very nicely in the future, I believe. And I hope he progresses pretty well, but that one's an interesting one to keep an eye on. In terms of catchers, obviously we kept around Alfaro and Diaz, and I'm pretty cool with leaving it the way it is. I hope Yerzy does continue to progress because he's 21 years old, and Anderson Franco is 21 years old as well. So a couple good prospects waiting in the wings, but Alfaro, contract-wise, we kept him around 5 years, $4 million per, which I think is pretty good, especially for the production that we get out of him. That'll keep him through like 31 years old, and that'll be a good time to renegotiate a deal there. Elias Diaz, 2.7 for 3 years, so really cheap deal for a guy that performed really well for us last year. I'm comfortable there at catcher, so nothing to report there. But in terms of first base, Josh Bell up to a 97 overall with A potential. As you can see, his contract is manageable for us, $7.3 million for 5 years, and we signed that contract before he, won all of his titles and everything. So I think that's why we were able to get him at such a manageable contract, which really helps out the team. But the thing of note at first base is we got AJ Reid, this guy that's a 72 overall with A potential. He's got a really good bat with a lot of power, and he's kind of our substitution for what Pedro Alvarez was last year. Pedro Alvarez was kind of our power bat off the bench, and I'm using AJ Reid as that this year. So we let Pedro Alvarez go, and AJ Reid can play a lot of secondary positions. He can play second, third base, and shortstop, which is really nice. Now, he was another Rule 5 draft, and I mean, how can you pass up on a guy that has A potential in the Rule 5 draft? You can't. I mean, you don't have to give up anything for him. You just have to keep him on your roster year-round. And I think that will be a good person for us to have as a rotational player and a good bench bat. The only problem that poses for us is that poses some complications in terms of calling up and sending down players. Obviously, he has to stay up, and this is where we start to run into problems, is because we have a lot of positional players because I accidentally signed Josh Harrison, and that's what you'll see here at second base. I have 3 second basemen that are potentially going to be really good for us. We brought over Tim Anderson. And this was a trade where we helped out that team quite a bit. And he got like a huge confidence boost when he came over. He was like an 84, but he's now up to an 89 when we traded for him. So I don't know what was going on there. But he is projected to be a really good second baseman for us. I just wanted to get somebody that was better defensively than Adam Frazier. I was kind of tired of the defensive errors and stuff caused by Adam Frazier. While I like Adam Frazier's bat a whole lot, I think he just slots in much more as kind of a utility type of guy. As you can see, he can play a lot of positions, but he doesn't play any of them very well. He just has a really good bat. And so that's what I like to use him as right now. I mean, he's 28. He's not going to progress a ton more, and he's under contract for a manageable amount, $3 million per. And then Tim Anderson's under contract for a manageable amount for what his overall is. And so we could consider dealing away Adam Frazier to a team that will start him, but that's a consideration we're going to have to make later on, depending on how everybody's performing. And then obviously we brought in Josh Harrison, who again is another utility guy that can play a bunch of different positions, and that's a common theme that you'll see with these guys that we brought in this season, is guys that can play a bunch of different positions, because last year I kind of got frustrated not having guys that I can play in multiple different spots. And Josh Harrison gives us some of that flexibility. He's probably going to start out down in AAA, but we'll see kind of what happens with him. As for right now, he's up in MLB just to see if we can, in spring training, get his bat hot or anything like that. At third base, everything stayed the same. Vladdy Jr. is over here. We signed him to a 3-year, $1.7 per deal. He should increase in overall quickly because I think we'll get his bat up there pretty quickly. Colin Moran we kept around for 3 extra years at $1.1 million. I want to get him a starting spot, but I don't know where to start him at. I don't really have a position for him, but that's okay. I mean, I guess I'm just going to start utilizing him as a rotational, platoon type of player. But he might be a trade piece to consider, but we'll see. Joe Ashburn, the first-round draft pick, looks to be really good out here. I think that'll be a good start in AAA for him. I think that he'll turn out to be pretty good. I mean, his bat is already really good. He just needs to work on his defense, and then we should see him up on the major league team in not too distant future. In terms of shortstop, we have Cole Tucker out here at an 80 overall with A potential. Nothing new there. I mean, that's what he was last year. And then we brought in this J.P. Crawford guy. I don't know what trade he came over in. He came over from the Phillies, obviously, but I didn't remember getting an A potential guy. But I saw this when I was going through my team. I was like, when did we get this guy? But that's somebody that's worth noting. We have some extra A potential guys now. Obviously, I've been talking about this for the past season. Starling Marte bumps over to left field as an 89 overall with A potential. He did get an A potential upgrade because he performed so well last year and in the playoffs, so that's exciting. I'm glad to get him back into left field where I feel like he should be playing. And then we have Seiji Ubiyashi backing him up. Like I said, he's going to be a utility player for us. He can play a lot of different positions, both outfield spots and first base, which is nice to see. A lot of speed, a lot of ability there, so we're going to try and platoon him in wherever we can. And this season, you should see us be able to give guys as many off days as possible and keep guys fresh a lot more easily. And the reason being for that is that I worked hard to make sure that I have good bench players that can play multiple positions. And then we have a bunch of other B potential guys. Just some guys that we picked up in free agency that they were just sitting out there and they had B potential, so I figured I'd give them a shot. A guy like Jake Cave, and then a guy like Boog Powell. 550K for these guys. They might turn into something, they might not. We'll see. But I brought in a bunch of guys like that. And then I brought in a bunch of single-A players, which I don't normally do, but some guys that just have good abilities. So like a guy like Tim Foster, who has like really good speed and really good fielding ability. I just brought in guys like that could potentially develop into something. And then in center field, here was our big acquisition to fill out the center field spot. And I'll discuss why I did this in a minute. But we brought in Malik Smith, a lot of speed out there in center field, a lot of fielding ability. Obviously, you guys know that that's what I like to have out in the field. But Travis Swaggerty, he wasn't actually a 72 a couple minutes ago. He was like a 69. And so his confidence must have gone up for some reason. But what I'm getting at here is that Travis Swaggerty still isn't ready to play the outfield, in my opinion. We could have brought him up, but I want to give him another year. He's only 22 years old. I want to give him another year down in AAA, and then we're going to try and find a spot for him after that. I don't know how it's going to work out, but we'll try and find a spot for him. And then obviously we have a bunch of other prospects out here. Some guys we picked up. This one was one that I liked that was just sitting out there in free agency, was Anthony Alford. So I brought him in. Just looks like a beast, personally. Lolo Sanchez was already on the team, and then brought in John Diaz. I want to say he was a draft pick. I don't remember. But a lot of potential here at the center field spot. Malik Smith looks to be a really good player. Now, Travis Swaggerty, what he might do is he might take over Starling Marte's spot. We'll see how it all plays out. I ideally would like to transition Marte into what Ubiashi is, a guy that's like a platoon type of player, but I don't know if that'll work. He might end up having to get dealt to a team that he could start on. But here's my big pickup that I'm really excited about. I reversed the Pittsburgh Pirates' biggest mistake that they've made in the past however many years. I brought back Austin Meadows. Austin Meadows is our starting right fielder here for the 2020 season. He's an 84 overall with A potential. He's 24 years old. He's got all types of power and contact in his bat, which is beautiful to see. And he has some good fielding ability and some decent speed, which is really nice to see. And then contract-wise, we have him under control for 5 years, a decent manageable contract number at $2.1 million and $1.8 million. So very good to see out there in right field. But that does, like I said, this is going to logjam us at positions because guys like Moran and Travis Swaggerty, they're not going to necessarily be able to get called up. But I'm okay with it because now I have guys that I can play at multiple positions, and I have guys that I can feel comfortable calling up at different points. I'm comfortable with this team the way it is, and I think that I'm pretty happy with the way that this stuff turned out. Obviously, we're going to see how the bats work and how the pitching staff performs, but that's the way the team is moving into 2020. And then what I did want to show you guys is how everything stacks up in terms of like the pitching rotation. So obviously, you guys saw this isn't going to be how it's going to be. I think it's going to be like this. It's going to be Trevor Williams. No, it'll be Tyone, Williams, Lopez, Kopech, Keller. And then in terms of the bullpen, this is how everything stacks out. Vasquez, the two setups are Bradley and Kella. The middle relievers are Santana, Jimenez, and Tanner Scott. And then Urania is the long reliever. And we have room to call up other guys if need be. And then in terms of the lineup, what I did really like is that I can now play Malik Smith as the leadoff, and Starling Marte can fit more into, a kind of like bat guys in type of role, because he does have a little bit of sneaky power. Like I've been saying all the time, is that he will hit home runs, and so having a guy in front of him on base when he hits those home runs, I think will be really helpful. So the lineup is primarily going to be Malik Smith, Marte. I'm going to start Meadows at 3 just to see how that works out because he batted really well. Then Josh Bell as the cleanup. And then we kind of recycle the rotation. We're doing what I usually like to do, which is to restart the rotation at number 5. So somebody fast that'll get on base, and that'll be Tim Anderson, then Cole Tucker, and then Vladdy Jr. in essentially the 3 spot in my eyes to clean it, to power up after them and bat them in, and then Colin Moran in the cleanup spot out there. These two could kind of be flipped, but it's whatever. This is primarily how the rotation is going to work out. And then the bench is going to be Adam Frazier, Josh Harrison, Ubiashi, AJ Reid, and then whichever catcher isn't playing that day. So that's how things stack out in terms of there. And then I want to show you guys how we helped out the other teams that we did make deals with. And so first things first, we'll have to go to the White Sox and the Marlins primarily, is who we tried to help out. So the Miami Marlins actually shake out to be a pretty good team. As you can see, starting pitching-wise, they have Trevor Richards, who's pretty good, and then a lot of potential at the pitching spots. So they're pretty solid at starting pitcher as long as some of these guys develop into something nice. Relief-wise, we ended up giving them Michael Feliz last year. He got upgraded to B potential and everything like that, so they are looking good relief-wise. They did move Steckenrider to closing pitchers, which is really nice, so they have a really nice closing pitcher. And then they have a pretty solid bullpen here with a combination of any of these guys, really. They have a decent bullpen, and so they're looking like a team that could potentially contend now at this point. Obviously, we gave them Steve Barron last year. He's up to a 79 with B potential. They got Chance Sisco in the Rule 5 draft, so they have two really good potential catchers, and Steve Barron's a really good defensive catcher. First baseman, Mark Reynolds, not anything special there, but a good bat. Kevin Kramer, we gave them last year at second base, and he projects to be a pretty good starter for them at second base, and he's got a lot of potential. And then Brian Anderson, as always, is their starter third baseman with a potential. And then Rosel Herrera, they have good potential at shortstop here. And then in the field, Gabby Guerrera, 75 with B. In center field, Victor Meza is now up to 71 with a potential, so he projects to be a good, at least defensive starter in center field. And then in right field, we gave them Corey Dickerson. Yes, we traded away Corey Dickerson, but he's going to kind of be their centerpiece. He's a very good defensive player and a very good bat, coming off a very good year with us where he had that injury, but I think that he can be kind of a centerpiece for them and get them back into the swing of things and get them back in a contention in their division, which I think is really important. So I think we helped out the Marlins quite a bit. And then I want to go ahead and take a look at the White Sox, which would be pretty important. I'm not too sure how great the White Sox improved based on these things, but if you look at their roster, starting pitching wise, they're pretty good. I mean, they have Carlos Rodon and Chad Cole we gave them, so they have a good top two. We gave them Nick Kingham, who has a potential, who could turn out to be something nice as a maybe even an ace in their rotation. And then they have other guys that have a lot of potential down here. We gave them Rookie Davis, who has good potential, and so they have all types of potential just waiting here at starting pitcher. They just need to develop something. And then in terms of relief pitcher, their bullpen's already good, and we added to it. So they had Jace Fry. We gave them Richard Rodriguez, who's an 85. We gave them Kyle Crick, who is an 80. I believe he's actually like an 82 or an 83, but his confidence is down, probably from being traded. And then they have a couple other guys to round out the bullpen. So they have a really strong bullpen as long as their starters can give them some quality innings. And then at closing pitcher, they obviously have Alex Colomé, who is a really good closing pitcher. At catcher, they have some potential guys, but they have Alex Avila, who's at least a good defensive catcher. At first baseman, they still have not very much, but at second baseman, they have Yolmer Sanchez, who is pretty good. They have Yohan Moncada, who is kind of their superstar in the making at third base. At shortstop, they have some guys that have some decent potential ready to kind of move up. At left field, we gave them Kevin Newman. We moved him into left field because he's capable of playing the position, and he actually has the defensive ability to do so. And so he is a nice fielder for them and should turn into something very good. In center field, they have an A potential Luis Robert, and then in right field, they have Eloy Jimenez. So the team looks like, they could kind of get back into the swing of things soon and potentially compete within a year. So I'm kind of happy with the way that we helped out both of those teams. We'll see how things play out with them, but in my opinion, both teams won at least a little bit in some regard in those trades. And I made sure that I wasn't totally screwing over whoever I was trading. I made sure that the trade bar was in their favor quite a bit whenever I did trade. So that's how the team stacks up for 2020. If there's anything else that you guys want to see, let me know. None of the staff retired. There was a scout that retired, which is really not that big of a deal. I'm open to still doing some more deals, but I think we're pretty much set up for where we want to be. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hopefully you are enjoying seeing where we are over a year into the franchise after the postseason, the offseason, and I'll see you guys in the next video. I hope you guys have a great night. See you in the next one.